Okay, we're recording.
Okay.
Hello,
Hello.
everybody. Welcome
Good to see your
to
face.
Face. If you guys are listening on a podcast app, we record our podcasts as well through video. And so you can go to our YouTube channel and check those out as well. If you like to watch podcasts, I know some people enjoy to see the host's face. So that's an
Yeah, I
option
didn't
for you as
understand
well.
that. I didn't understand that until I started using YouTube on my TV.
Yeah.
And I would do like a video I usually do like yoga on YouTube. And then afterwards it like recommends all this stuff. And podcasts would pop up like Aubrey Marcus and stuff. I'm like, oh, and so I'd start watching them. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's where people like, I don't know. I just never been a YouTube person,
No, me
but I think
neither.
it's awesome.
And like Joe Rogan, I don't know about now that he just podcasts through Spotify, but he used to have his on YouTube as well. And so you could go watch him, which is always interesting because he always has some super interesting people that he
Well,
podcasts
and
with.
what's cool
One
is
guy, I was just gonna
I
say
was
one
gonna say
guy episode he did, the guy came with like a full camo outfit, like he was out in the bush, and so he had like this green, I can't remember who it was, Duncan Trussell, I think it's Duncan Trussell. He had like this like camo outfit on, like green grass on his head and everything, like he was in the bush like hunting or something.
awesome. Well, I was gonna say, I know like he always has his like what's his assistant's name on that
Jamie.
show? Jamie. He always
Yeah.
has him like pull up documents and stuff. So
Yes.
like when you watch his, you can see like when the carnivore MD was on there, he's like, pull up the constipation file or some shit like that, like
Yeah.
they're pulling up all of his studies and stuff that he had. So yeah, there's some benefit to watching podcasts.
There
We
is.
will try and put a presentation together for one of our episodes.
Yeah, we don't have any documents to share today, so.
No.
All right, is there something before we get started on our topic today? Is there anything you want to share?
Yeah, actually, so we just talked about the whole birth control and IUD thing. And I'm still like recovering from all that. It's going to be a process, but I've noticed like as part of this process, my thyroid has felt like really inflamed. And yeah, and so I was like, this morning, just so randomly, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to test for some thyroid supplementation and just see. So you remember when I did this with you, when I tested all the points on you?
Yeah.
It's for my nutritional therapy. It's actually a really cool tool that they gave us in my schooling. It's the functional side of things. So we do, and it's FCA, functional clinical analysis, and you basically use like pressure points to test different functions in the body, whether it's your different points of digestion, liver and gallbladder, and there's like pressure points or reflex points. And so I tested for thyroid on the point for that. It's like right on your chest.
Yeah.
And it was totally like sensitive, but I was like, you know what? I don't know if it's because I worked out yesterday. I might just be sore.
Right.
But then I pulled, so the other, the real like magical kind of brilliance of this tool, this the functional clinical analysis, and then what you do is you LNT. So it's a lingual neural testing. So you can test supplements or even food, and you stick the supplements in your mouth and you retest the same points. Yeah. So it's really cool. So like when I pressed on the point for the thyroid, it was definitely like not feeling good. And so then I took the supplements and I stick them in my mouth, and you take one at a time, or you can combine them even if you want to see if a combination would be better. Yeah. And you just hold it in your mouth for like 30 seconds and you test the point again. And if the sensitivity kind of goes down, the tenderness, then that's a good supplement. So it's a trip. So it's your body's way of like, because there's a lingual neural connection. So just having it in your mouth, think of it as like, you know how you have cravings that kind of tell you might have like a deficiency. Right. So your body craves what it needs. Mm-hmm. So same thing, like when you put it in your mouth, your body's like, oh, yes, that's what I need, And so those the tenderness of those points will go down if it's a supplement that would be supportive. So yeah, I tested some supplements, and sure enough, like one of them made it completely go away.
So
So
interesting.
isn't that super cool? I
Yeah.
haven't really done a lot of playing with it, just in the class. And I did it with like Eric, my ex-husband.
Mhm.
Um, I tested him as part of like practicing for my final exam.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like I haven't really played with it a lot. I need some like people to let me test them and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and it was super cool to experience for myself, because when I went through it in the class, I didn't have like everything was good. Like I didn't test much. There's a couple things that like I ended up testing well for a couple supplements, but for the most part, I was like good. So this is like a cool thing to just like experience. Like, oh, I'm gonna try getting that supplement and see if it helps me. Like, I
That's
don't know.
really
It
cool.
was cool. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I remember when I came over and you tested me. I think there was
Mhm.
one spot that was like a little
Yeah.
sensitive. I can't remember where it was, down by my hip or something, maybe. I think, but other
That
than
sounds
that,
kind of right.
it was pretty good.
But you giggled the whole time. Like you were so giggly, like I was like tickling you.
Yeah.
And actually,
Which is
I
funny because I'm
learned,
not ticklish usually.
well, but what I learned from that, I didn't know at the time, but later I was kind of rereading the literature that they gave us about it in my book. And like that might have actually been an indicator of like, because you're supposed to test for tenderness. So it's like what it's tenderness. It's almost like a soreness, kind of like it feels tender.
Right.
But for you, your reaction might have been that you were just kind of like ticklish. So there
Mhm.
may have been even something there
Huh.
that like it'd be curious to see if certain supplements would have made you less sensitive in that
Yeah.
way.
We'll
I
have
don't
to
know.
check it out. Let's try it again.
Right. Fun stuff. What about you? You got anything you wanted to share?
Oh goodness. Let's see. Well, I just took a social media break. So when we're recording this episode, I'm coming back from taking a break from social media for over a month. I was off.
Is it
And
that long?
it was kind of, yeah. And I wish it had been longer. I wanted to stay off, but uh, I know I needed to be on for work and whatnot. So I decided to jump back on, and it's been pretty good. There's days where, like yesterday was a day where I was like, I just don't really feel like being on very much. And
Mhm.
so it's definitely trying to strike that balance between how much you feel like being on and then how much like the algorithm gods want you to be on, like for your business and work and stuff like that. And so I've
Mhm.
noticed coming back, it's definitely slow to pick up with like my statistics and stuff like that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so gotta love Facebook and Instagram, man.
Mhm.
God, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy how
Mhm.
much we need, for growing a business online, especially somebody like us, me who was traveling for so long and then in a new city,
Mhm.
I don't know anybody. And so I grow
Yeah.
my businesses online. So it's been interesting. It was great to be off though. I loved it. My husband was even like, you seem happier, you're
Yeah.
more present. I liked being off. If social media, honestly, if social media went away tomorrow, I wouldn't be sad about it. I wouldn't at
Right.
all. I really enjoy being off. I like to connect with people in
Mhm.
person.
Hear
So
you.
I'm really hoping that this summer I'll be able to meet some more people here in our new town and make some connections that way where we can meet more in person. So
Right.
yeah.
Funny story about that is Tiffany comes back from social media, and I think it was like the same day or the next day I was like, I'm deleting Instagram and Facebook off my phone.
It was so funny.
And it was not like calculated by any means. I was like leading up to that, I was like, I'm getting tired of these having these on my phone. They're becoming a huge distraction.
Yeah.
I feel like, I'm not getting anything done that I want to be getting done. And it's just like I felt like it was just too much. It felt like a lot of noise in my life.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm deleting them. I'm so done. So I've been checking Instagram and Facebook on the computer a couple times a day. And outside of that, it's been, how long's it been? Like a week?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's nice.
I,
It really is. And, my girlfriend she's a business coach and she helps women with businesses and stuff. And I listened to a call of hers the other day and she said, if it's not fun, you know, don't do it. And she's like, I used to feel like I had to post at a certain time in a certain way, and my photos had to look a certain way. And she's like, when you get out of that mindset, it's so much more freeing. Just post what you want, and you're more genuine in what you're sharing. You know, you're sharing
Yeah.
in the moment when it's on your mind versus scheduling it out a month in advance. And I was like, that's
Mm-hmm.
a really good way to look at it. But yeah, the noise is hard, and I'm not very good at balance. Everybody always asks me, how do you balance it all? How do you do it all? And it's like, we're balanced. Like, I balance it all kind of. Social media is one thing that I don't do a great job with. So
It's
what
super
I,
addictive.
it
It's
is,
meant to be addictive. And that's
it
what I
is.
found. Like, it took me a couple days, even like I was just grabbing my phone and I was like checking my email incessantly. Like,
Mhm.
because I just like had this habit of picking up my phone and like clicking on something in between activities, or, you know, just
Yeah.
sitting, even just sitting and watching like a show with Charlie or something. Like, I would pick up my phone and look at social media. It was bad. I was super addicted.
Yeah, it is. It is really addicting. And I know there's, you know, for a while there, I would just scroll and then it's like 20 minutes is gone. You're like, oh man, I did not want to be on this thing for 20 minutes. And so now I'm to the point where
Mhm.
I'm like, I get on, I go to like my favorite accounts or look at some stories and then share. So it's more about pushing content versus consuming a lot of content.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that'll be a good balance for me. But I try to set timers. I have reminders on my phone to check it like 3 times a day. And then I try to look at the clock and only stay on for 15 minutes when I'm on there.
Yeah,
So that's
I told you I would totally cheat on that. There's no
right.
way.
I'm
I
not
have
perfect all
like,
the time, but it's definitely like last night I was like, oh, I should get on and post something. And I'm like, God, I really don't want to. My timer went off to check and I was like, media after a bit of a break, but I did get a lot of great messages from people. I had a lot of people like reach out while I was gone that they hadn't seen me on, which was nice.
mhm.
And then, you know,
Yeah,
I shared a lot about Audrey and her pans and how it's been and stuff. And I got so many great messages from people on that and
yeah,
whatnot.
that's awesome.
People asking about what it is and then saying, oh my gosh, I Googled this. I'm so sorry you guys are going through that and everything. So it's just been nice that the people that I've really connected with through social media have been super supportive. So
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and don't exactly like I've had great experiences through social media. I mean, I've mentioned it before in one of our other episodes that I mean, I basically have gotten to where I am because of somebody on social media helping me, like leading me to the GAPS diet. So
yeah,
there's so many benefits to it, but I mean, you have to use it in that kind of a way. I mean, use it in the way that works for you. And I
right.
was just getting to a point, I was like, oh, I'm just so over it.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm actually feeling like I want to try and find a way to build my business, maybe not using social media, at least not to the extent of it being like a major piece of it, you know?
Yeah.
I like the in-person stuff.
Yeah.
Um, you know, actual like talking in person, live,
Yeah. I
like real
think you make
connection.
really, really good, meaningful connections that way with people. And,
Mhm.
you know, I use Facebook mostly now, like for groups. I'm in a lot of groups in the area since we're new to the area. So I joined a lot of the homeschool groups here and moms groups and stuff like that. So I'll go check those out to see if, you know, there's anything going on or see,
Mhm.
you know, look for a naturopathic pediatrician in the area, you know, like that's my newest search right now. And
Yeah.
so
That's
yeah.
brilliant. I haven't really used it that way, and I need to do, well, I have a little bit, but I need to more for like the local connections because
Hmm.
I'm, you know, looking at starting Charlie and homeschooling.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of our mutual friends yesterday about it actually, and she's
Hmm.
like, I think I'm in the same group as Tiffany for the homeschooling. You should join those. And I was like, oh yeah, because I'm trying to figure out how to like have opportunities for Charlie to be around other kids
Yep.
when I start homeschooling her. So
Yeah, totally.
I need to jump into those kinds of groups for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right,
Cool.
cool.
All right.
So topic of the hour. This is gonna be kind of like an interview of Tiffany for this episode. I'm excited about this conversation though, because I have like a lot of curiosity around this topic. So we're gonna talk about Tiffany and her family living on the road for how long were you guys traveling on around?
About a year and a half or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm super curious about this whole, I mean, I of course have followed her through this whole experience, but there's a lot of details that like I know I'm missing.
Right.
Um, And I actually am curious about it sort of selfishly too, because I do consider this as a possibility for myself. I would love to do what you guys did, if I could ever make it happen. So we're going to talk about how Tiffany lived on the road in an RV for a year and a half
Yeah,
or a
totally.
trailer. So we can just hop in.
Okay.
I just starting out with like if you want to just give like a high level overview explaining like what exactly you guys did.
Yeah. So in 2019, we sold our house. We lived on the west side of the Cascade Mountains in like the greater Seattle, Puget Sound area. Sold our house and bought a 41-foot fifth wheel trailer and started traveling around the country in Canada. So that's what we did. We did that for a year and a half. We went to 25 states and Canada. We hit a couple places in Canada as well and saw a lot of things, met a lot of people, had some great times, had some terrible times. And but yeah, so we did that. We traveled all over for about a year and a half or so.
Yeah, and like you guys did this, you had a house out here and you sold it specifically to kind of do this whole like it was so random. I'll be honest, like this is like out of left field, never saw this coming for Tiffany to want to do this.
I don't think many
Um,
people did. It was
um
random. Well,
yeah, it was
no, go ahead.
I don't know. I was just gonna say like it's super awesome, but like you guys did a complete like change of lifestyle.
Right. Well, we knew. So here's the thing. My husband had been on assignments out of state for almost all of 2017. And then for a good chunk of 2018, he was on assignments in Kansas
That's true.
at a large supplier of his companies there. And when he came home, he started working from home, mostly because his commute was an hour and a half each way and nobody went into the office. So he would drive an hour and a half to sit in an office by himself. And he's like, why am I doing this? So him and his boss decided he could work from home and come in like once a week, once every couple of weeks. And so we knew at that point we wanted to move. Like we had planned in 2018 to move to the east side of the mountains to Spokane, where we are now. It didn't happen in 2018. We knew that we still wanted to try to move out of Western Washington. And so I had actually started following this family, which a lot of people know. They're called the Bucket List family, and they traveled around the world with their little kids. So they flew places, traveled around the world to different countries and whatnot. And I was like, man, I don't think my kids would do very good traveling around the world on planes. What if we bought a trailer and traveled around the states? So that was kind of what spurred this thing. When I started looking into it a little bit more, I started finding that there are families that did it. I had no idea there was families that did this.
Right.
And so I started following a couple different families that have been traveling for a while, and started doing our research on how much it would cost. And my husband was like, "You're crazy. This is silly. We're not going to do this," until I showed him some cost breakdowns of like we could save money and stuff like that. And then he was kind of on board with the whole thing when he saw that we would be able to save money. So
I mean, it's a good motivating factor, I suppose.
Side
But
note though, and I'll touch on based on it a little bit, we didn't save nearly as much as we thought we would.
right. Yeah, we definitely will hit on that. Like ultimately, why did you guys decide to do it though?
I think we decided to do it because I was tired. I was just tired. I felt like we were living in the rat race. I was tired of living in Western Washington. Honestly, I've lived there my entire life. We did a 3-month stint in Wichita when we thought we were going to be there for a year and a half or two. We ended up only being there for 3 months. And I was just like, I want to get away from Western Washington. We knew we wanted to. I wanted to get out of the rat race and do something different. You know, I was shuttling my daughter to dance 4 nights a week and would sit there for hours. And then she played baseball. And then my son was getting into, activities and gym and stuff like that. And I just felt like we were just like living this cycle, just this constant cycle of just the rat race over and over, go to work, take the kids to school, go to the gym, pick them up, go to dance, come home, eat dinner, go to bed, do it again the next day. And I was just, honestly, I was just kind of tired of that. And I was like, I want something different and unique, and to take advantage of the fact that Kellen was able to work from home. And, you know, it was like, why don't we just give this a shot? You know, we live in such a materialistic world. And I wanted to, you know, we already pretty minimalist people. We had a big house, but we weren't like packed to the gills with stuff. And so I was like, you know, if we can get rid of a bunch of our stuff and see how little we can live and see the country, like, let's do it. You know? And we had known we wanted to get out of the area anyways. So this was a great opportunity to kind of do something a little different.
Yeah. And totally, like when you brought this up, it was sort of like mind blowing. Like I hadn't really thought about how people might be doing that or traveling the world, traveling the country. I mean, it was such a like, whoa, that's crazy, but cool, you know?
Yeah.
And I see more and more I feel like of course you don't see it as much with families because it's harder with kids, but like people that just like get up and travel the world. Like it was not something that I ever thought about doing. But looking back, man, if I had that bug in my ear when I was like in my early 20s to like travel the world and see it, oh God, I will do it at some point. And so that's also, you know, partly why it appeals to me to do what you guys did, is to get around. And there's a lot of this country I have not seen, and I think it'd be so cool.
Well, and I think
to
that
see
too is people, when they think about traveling, they're like, oh, I want to go to Europe and I want to go to Mexico and see all the things that the world has to offer, which is awesome. And there is so much history outside of the States, but we have so much here that most people don't get to see in their entire life. You know, most people have only been to a handful of states or less. And there's so many things. And I figured instead of reading about it in a book, why don't we go see it in person? So instead of learning about like the Florida Everglades in a book, right, or National Geographic, why don't we go see them in person? Like that kind of stuff, you know? So it was so really cool to learn about it and incorporate the places we went in our kids' homeschool and stuff like that.
Yeah. So can you break down kind of the steps you guys took to sort of like prepare for this whole adventure?
Yeah. So we put our house up for sale, and it sold within like a week. We had a contract.
The market around here is nuts.
Yeah. So it ended up happening a lot faster than we had thought it would. And so then we had a big garage sale and sold like 75 to 80% of our stuff.
Oh my gosh.
Which is funny because then we had a storage unit that we kept the stuff that we wanted to keep. And when we went to the storage unit to start taking stuff out, there's things I'm like, why did I kept it? I'm like, why did I keep this of all the things? You know, I kept some really random things. You know, I kept pictures, sentimental items and stuff like that. But then there was some super weird things I kept, like, I don't even know, like a weird bowl or something. I'm like, why did I keep this bowl? Or like the salad spinner or something? Like, why did I keep that? That's so silly to me.
I mean, it gives perspective though of like when you go a year and a half without something. I mean, how many times I'm like, even myself, I will put like clothes away for a season or something. I'll forget I even have them.
Yeah.
And you pull them out and you're like, I forgot about that. Like there's so many things. If you put them away, like you realize you don't need them. Like how often in your drawers do you have stuff you don't even realize you have?
Totally. Yeah. So then we had a big garage sale. We found our rig. So I did a lot of research on the right kind of setup for full timing, because if you go to research different trailers and motorhomes and stuff like that, there's some that are set up for full-time living and some that are not. What's going to change with that is things like your suspension, your insulation, your windows, stuff like that, the size of the holding tanks you have on your rig, like that's going to vary depending on if your rig is set up for like a weekend warrior type thing or if it's set up for full-time living. So I knew that we wanted one for full-time living. And we wanted one that was a decent size. And so I just found the brand that we ended up buying, which is top rated. And, you know, there's one that's like the Rolls Royce of fifth wheel trailers for full-time living. And that's like a house. It's like almost as much as we paid for the house that we're in right now.
Right.
So I was like, we're not going to get that into it because we didn't know. We figured we'd do it for a year. We're like, let's do it for a year and then go from there. And so we found a used rig that the people had had for 6 months, and it only driven it 15 miles.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so the husband wanted to travel. The wife was like, no, this isn't going to work for me. And so he had to sell it. And so he had to get rid of it. And so we got a really good deal on it, hauled it up here, bought it in Oregon, hauled it up here. And then once we had our garage sale, started moving stuff into it from the house and took a trip over in the U-Haul to our storage unit here on the east side of the mountains. And that's kind of how we started. And then we ended up staying in the area close to our house at a campground for about a month while my daughter finished school and baseball and dance and whatnot. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then we took
Yeah.
off.
So the whole like rig setup, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned all that because those are things you just like, I feel like I can just go buy a trailer and not think much about it or whatever, you know?
Yes.
So me, like I'll just wing it and be like, all right, I'm gonna go get a trailer and like not think too much about the details of anything. So that's really like valuable information to like consider.
Well, and I think a lot of it depends too on if you're somebody who you're like, there are a lot of full-time families. I'd say the majority of full-time families or people who travel full-time follow the weather, right? So they go where it's warm.
Yeah.
365 days a year. We knew we wanted to be in snow at some point, likely. And so that was a big deal for us to get a rig that could withstand the cold and whatnot. If you're somebody who's going to be a sun chaser and you're going to stay where it's warm throughout the year, yes, you like the warm.
That's
So
me.
if you're somebody who's going to do that, then you don't need, yes, the insulation helps with the heat and stuff like that, but you can come to Washington in the summer here, right? And you don't have to worry about being in Southern California in Palm Springs at 105 degrees or in Phoenix at 120 degrees in August, right? Like you can go where it's not as hot and then go back there in the winter. And so you don't have to worry quite as much about the seasonality of your rig.
Yeah.
You're just chasing the sun. So,
but like the tank size, that sounds important.
Tank size for us was important for 4 people. 4 people in a rig. We wanted to make sure we had decent size holding tanks. So our trailer has 1 black tank, which is your toilet, and then 2 gray tanks. So 1 for the shower and sink in the bathroom, and then 1 for the kitchen sink. There's some rigs that are our size that have 2 bathrooms. So they'll have 1 bathroom with a shower and then 1 with just a sink and a toilet. And sometimes they'll have like another holding tank, but typically they're a little smaller. And I think ours was like, we had like 100-gallon freshwater tank. So when we could boondock, which is camping, like not in a campground, just camping off grid. And then I think our grade tanks were 60 or 80, and our black tank was about 82. So they're pretty good size holding tanks. So we can go over a week. We can go a week and a half full time or so without having to dump our tank. So you get really efficient at washing dishes and using little water when you take a shower when you live with limited space for holding your wastewater.
Right. And then I'm thinking about like the trailer size itself. So you guys had a good size trailer. Like
yeah, they don't get much
bigger on wheels.
They don't get much bigger than that. 45 feet, I think, is the biggest that I've ever seen of a trailer. I don't know if they get too much bigger than that unless they're custom built. So 45 is typically the max. Ours is about 41 feet. And it has a bunk room. So we knew that we wanted a bunk room for the kids to have a place to sleep. I liked the mid bunk, which is what we have because I like having a bigger living area. A lot of people like having a rear bunk for kids because then the kids have a little more space, which is nice, but then you have a smaller living area. And we had a lot of people over at our trailer, parents and family would come visit. And so it was nice to have more sitting area for people. So that's why we chose our setup. There are some people that we have friends that have really nice home that has a master bedroom in the back and it has just a bunk bed for the kids. That's kind of like in a hallway and they can just shut a curtain to their bunk beds. And we've met people that traveled in a 26-foot Class C motorhome, which is the one that's over the cab, with 3 kids and 2 huskies. So it's like we have met people traveling in all kinds of situations. I think our rig is about 430 square feet. So people are like, oh my God, that's tiny, but it's big for
A trailer, yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
it was big. I'm like, this feels like my apartment in here.
Yeah. I mean, it was big. People were like, when it's closed up, you're like, and you see it driving down the road, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's so big, you know, but it
Yeah.
opens up and it was a good size. You know, we built a bunk bed in the bunk room for what originally was our son. And then there was a loft over his room. And that's where Audrey slept at first. And then at the 1 year mark, they switched and Emmett went to sleep in the loft and Audrey slept in the bedroom. And then we ended up bringing our bed from our house and putting that in our bedroom. So we just had our normal mattress.
Oh, is that what you did?
Yep. So they come with some kind of crappy mattresses. Most people upgrade their mattress anyways. And we're like, well, we might as well just bring ours. Otherwise it's just going to go to storage or get sold. And we had just bought it. And so it was pretty new. So we didn't really want to sell it. So we're like, let's just bring it into the trailer. And so, yeah. So
there you go.
Yeah.
That was another thing I was going to ask about, like sleeping comfortably. Cause yeah, I can't, it's one thing to like camp for a weekend in like a trailer mattress, but being comfortable full time.
Yeah, there's some lighter, and our mattress, since it was new, it was pretty lightweight, but there's some other people buy specific. A lot of people like Tempur-Pedic mattresses or sleep something. I know a lot of people get the like Tempur-Pedic mattresses for their rigs. We ended up doing foam, like memory foam mattresses for the kids.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, we bought memory foam for them for their beds.
There you go.
Which is fine because they're little, you know, so they didn't need fancy.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the places you guys went.
Yeah.
Like, do you have some favorites, not so favorites?
Everybody always asks that. What's your favorite place you went to live? And still to this day, which was one of the first places we went within the first month and a half, is Glacier National Park in Montana.
Oh yeah.
Yep. We tried to hit as many national parks as we could, and Glacier still by far is my favorite place that we went and visited. It is awe-inspiring. We spent a week there, and I wish we had had more time because my husband was working during the day and I would homeschool the kids, and then we would just kind of wait for him to get done working and then go explore. And so we only have like a few hours in the afternoon, evening to explore. And I wish that we had had more time there. I will go back there in a heartbeat. It is beautiful. The Going to the Sun Road, you drive this 50-mile road through the park to see all kinds of stuff. There's amazing hikes and lakes and the glaciers, and to see the history of the park, to see the glaciers. They'll have a picture of one glacier from 100 years ago and a picture of it now, to see like how global warming is affecting the melting of the glaciers and stuff like that. So it's just beautiful up there.
Really?
Yeah, that was by far my favorite. Banff is really cool too. We went to Banff and Lake Louise. A lot of people know Lake Louise because it's a bright blue lake, and the Chateau Fairmont Hotel is on it up in Banff, Canada, and outside of Banff. And we really liked it there too. We stayed at a hot springs campground with hot spring swimming pools and hot tubs, and
that sounds nice.
So that was definitely by far our favorite. We took the kids to Disney World, so we went all the way over to Florida and took the kids to Disney World. That was kind of like their big treat. We ended up, when COVID hit, we were in Florida for a while, and then we went to Alabama and stayed for a month, and a tornado was coming through. So we decided to actually leave the campground for a few days while the tornadoes came through, and then come back. And we went up to Kentucky and found this campground on this lake up there. And it was so pretty. And this was March at this time, March of last year. And it was just this little hidden gem.
Yeah.
Lake. And I was like, oh my gosh, we would love to bring our families back here. It was so pretty. Kentucky and Tennessee were surprising. I was surprised with Kentucky. It's so beautiful. And Alabama, we loved it where we were at there. So yeah, those are definitely some of our Colorado.
If I remember correctly, the bugs kind of chased you out of Florida. Yeah.
Oh, I know. I was like thinking about like our least favorite. And the least favorite place we stayed one night in this, I don't even know what town it was, but it was in Mississippi. We were making our way we had visited friends in Texas and stuff and stayed for a while there, and then did Mardi Gras in Louisiana with a girlfriend. And then we were making our way over to Florida, and we stayed one night in Mississippi. And we just, when we're staying one night, we'll either try to boondock. There's a lot of places called Harvest Hosts where like a winery or a brewery or a farm, you can stay for free there if you like buy something from their shop or something like that. So we tried to do that often, and we were just staying at this campground overnight. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad this is one night, because it was terrifying. Like the pictures, they take the picture from just the right angle, right? When they're advertising the campground. Oh my, it was so scary.
Stop.
It was scary. I made Kellen bring the kids' bikes in to the trailer overnight. I wouldn't even let him tie them up outside to the trailer. I made him bring them inside.
So what was scary about it? Like,
it was just really run down. The people just, I don't know. It was a little
kind of
scary. There was
sketchy.
a lot of like trash. The garbage cans the dumpsters weren't emptied. Like they were overflowing, and there was animals like pecking around the garbage and the dumpsters. And it just looked really sketchy. It wasn't a well taken care of campground. It didn't seem like the greatest part of town. But luckily we were only there just overnight and left pretty early the next morning and headed to Alabama after that and saw more family and whatnot. But yeah, we stayed at one campground in Florida when we were hitting Disney World, a campground in Kissimmee or Orlando, that general Orlando area. And we parked under a tree and ended up getting ants in our rib from this tree. And that's one thing with living in an RV, you get a lot of pests, and the ants, they were horrendous. They were everywhere. And so then we left that campground, went to a new campground, and then just fought the ants we actually were able to get rid of them relatively quickly. So by the time we left Florida, we had gotten rid of them. But yeah, we fought them. They just get in everywhere.
Man, ants. They're the bane of my existence. I have a theory that they're like taking over the world. Like we don't even know it. They are literally like the world is one big anthill. That's what I think. Like I'm constantly under attack.
She gets ants too. So
who's that?
My mom.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the ants were rough there. We got ants there, and then we went to Utah. Did we go to Utah first or Colorado first? I think we hit Colorado first. In Colorado, we got moths. So there's a lot of moths in Colorado Springs. So we got some, they weren't really as bad. We mostly found them in like underneath storage bins, but they would like come in and we'd end up killing them in the house, like 4 or 5 a day inside our rig. So we got moths there and got rid of the last one, which had found its way into one of our camp chairs here in Washington. And it was still alive. I couldn't believe it was still alive. Yeah. And then in Utah, we went to Moab. So we were in Moab for a week, and we did arches and canyonlands in Moab. And my mother-in-law told me what the bugs were. I don't even know what they were called. But once again, from being parked under a dang tree, we got these bugs, and they are horrendous. And we're like, okay, once we get out of here and drive down the road, we're going 70, like they'll go away. No. We drove to a campground in Zion, and they were still there, like thousands of them. It took us so long to get rid of them. Like it took us probably 4 months to get rid of the last of those bugs.
Oh my God.
They were terrible. And they were just,
what kind of bugs were they?
I don't even know. They're these little black bugs. And somebody told me, and I can't remember exactly what they were called.
Do they resemble any other bugs? Like, do they have wings? Are they
tiny miniature, almost like a miniature beetle?
Okay.
And they would like fall. So like you would like, and we would suck them up with our hand vacuum. I mean, they were everywhere. Like we would open we went to close our slide one day, and we're closing our slide out or pop out on our rig, and they're just in the crease. And so Kellen's closing the slide, and I am just vacuuming all of these bugs. We like sprayed our whole rig down with like, we don't use anything toxic. And so it was like this natural bug killer thing or bug deterrent or whatever it was. And they just kept following, and we would just find them everywhere. We're like, how are you still here? It was just crazy. So that was definitely with living in a rig, you did that. And then when we came here to Washington, the first cold weekend in Spokane, when we got snow, we got a rat.
Mm-hmm.
We thought
This is a tale.
Very common. It is very common to get mice in rigs because they're looking for a warm place, especially when you're somewhere cold. They're looking for a warm place. And we couldn't set traps, all this kind of stuff, couldn't catch it. They came in my kids' room, they had a wardrobe that had 3 drawers and a closet, and they would come into the bottom 2 drawers and was like eating their clothes to make a nest. Until one day I took all of their clothes out of the drawers and put a trap in there. We come home and we had caught it, and it was a pack rat. And if you have ever, it
was a monster.
It was huge. We thought it was a squirrel. At first, I was like, I think it's a squirrel. And it was still alive in the trap. Oh God, it was still alive. So then Killen, and it was like, of course, like injured and dying. So Killen had to take it out to the field and kill it, put out of its misery. But it was huge. I mean, it was like the size of his foot. And Kellen has like size 13 shoes. It was huge. It was huge. I was like, oh my God. So I was so thankful when we finally got rid of that because it kept eating all the kids' clothes. They were getting so irritated.
Oh God.
So that was probably the hardest part. We had it all with the pests, man. We had it all. But luckily we never got any, knock on wood, because our rig's in the shop right now getting fixed, but we never got anything in our food or anything like that. No bugs in our food. So
there you go.
Yeah. Right. So I was a little worried about that, but that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like what would like a typical day be like when you guys were living in the trailer?
I would say like the first 6 months you decide to full time, it's like you're living on vacation. We just felt like we were on vacation for the first 6 months. And that was, our friends had told us that. They're like, you feel like you're on vacation, but then you realize you still have to live your life. You have to work and you have to do school and all that kind of stuff. And in all honesty, it's like just living in a house, just in a smaller space. It's like we still had to work. We still had to do school with the kids. The nice thing was in the afternoons, instead of just going and doing like scheduled activities like a dance class or a sport or something, they would just go play with friends that they met at the campground, or we would go explore the area, or go to a museum or a park or explore a national park that we were by. And so it was just typically like just living your normal life, just in a small space. When you have to work, it's definitely a lot harder. And that's one thing I noticed. It was really hard when we had friends that weren't working. So they were just traveling and they just had all day to go do whatever they wanted. And we had to wait until like Kellen, I can do work whenever I want. So I would get up early in the morning and work before the kids would get up, and work before bedtime or work in the evenings, but he has to be on his computer for a certain amount of time, attend meetings and stuff like that. And so that was definitely the hardest part, is wanting to go do things earlier in the day, but not being able to because of his schedule and whatnot. So, but yeah, you kind of just get into a routine with just living kind of like you would in a house, with a little bit more freedom in the afternoon to explore. You're just seeing different things. So
yeah.
Drive days are definitely different.
Sure.
Trying to figure out your schedule for driving at first can be challenging. We had originally tried to limit it to like no more than 4 hours, like on a drive day, because the kids just, at first they were not loving the long drive days. After a while, they got used to it, and we figured out a schedule where they weren't on electronics for 8 hours, and made some compromises there. But they got used to it. We had some pretty long 10, 12-hour days and whatnot. So.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That sounds like rough with kids. I don't know.
At first it was like the fighting and the screaming and the when are we there? We're tired of being in the truck. But it was just like when we would stop for gas, get them out to run around and run the dog around and stretch their legs, let them get a snack. I'd always let them get a snack and wherever we were. And I started to pack food too, because if you don't pack food, you start spending a lot of money on drive days, just on like eating out and whatnot. And it can waste a lot of time too. So I pack their lunches, and then if we have to stop for gas, I'd let them get a little treat or something like that. So
yeah. So you talked about so you had the one like sketchy campgrounds, but all the others were, would you say, like pretty nice? Like, I don't know. That's one thought I have, especially if I was to do this, say by myself. I feel like as a female, you have to be like careful, make sure you're not in like a sketchy place. You
Yeah.
know, I don't know. I feel like there's a little bit of like a security piece to that, but maybe I'm just being kind of paranoid or like, I
I
don't
think
know.
it varies. We had a couple campground memberships. So there's one campground membership called Thousand Trails, and that's where a lot of the families go and stay in Thousand Trails campgrounds. They're not the nicest. Some of them are nicer than others. Some of them are a little more run down, but not terrible. You know, I never felt unsafe in any of those campgrounds. The ones we went to, that's where a lot of the kids are. So we
Yeah.
would try to, for at the first, I think the first 3 months we were traveling, we weren't in any of those campgrounds and we weren't meeting very many kids or any kids. And
Mm.
so we were, the kids were not happy. They were like, we're not having fun. We're not meeting friends or anything like that. And so we kind of bagged our plans and just headed toward the Thousand Trail campgrounds where they're located. And so then we kind of switched up our travel schedule so that we could kind of stay in what I called the system of Thousand Trail campgrounds so that the kids could have more friends and meet more kids. And they do a lot of activities at those campgrounds for kids and stuff like that. So that was really good. You can do everything from like super bougie campgrounds. Like we've stayed at some pretty super bougie campgrounds with like really nice amenities to just like boondock, which is where you're just camping off grid, you know, you're not in a campground, you're camping in a national forest or you're camping in a parking lot or, you know, like
Hmm.
a lot of people like to do on BLM land. A lot of people like to camp on BLM, Bureau of Labor Land Management land. And a lot of times you can camp for free that way. So that's really, really nice to be able to stay for free sometimes. And it kind of gets you away from the crowds if you want to have a little bit of quiet and kind of just go explore out your door instead of having to get out and drive somewhere to explore. So, but
Yeah.
there was very few places that we felt unsafe. And even our bikes got stolen at one campground, actually, mine and Kellen's bikes. We have really, really nice mountain bikes. Um, and our bikes, his and my bikes got stolen. And that was at a campground that I never felt unsafe at too. And that was actually in the middle of freaking nowhere campground. And so that was that was frustrating, but we never had any other issues. Some people I'd heard, oh, my rig got broken into. We never had any issues like that. Um, Most people were friendly. You know, it's kind of like a community, especially if you meet people like that are traveling with kids. There's some Facebook groups for full-time traveling families and they have get-togethers and people will be like post in a group, you know, like a full-time families traveling Southwest group, right? That I'm in, be like, oh, hey, we're at this campground. We're having a bonfire tonight at this campsite. Come join us, you know, like,
Hmm.
so you kind of build a community and you see friends along the way. We traveled with some people that we met for about 2 months. We traveled together with them. And so, yeah, so it's just fun to meet new people and see people that you've known and whatnot, stay connected.
And what about like the cost of all these places and I guess
Um,
cost in general, really?
and that varies too. So you can stay anywhere for free, like I said, on like BLM land or national forest, stuff like that. It doesn't cost anything a lot of times. To some of the campgrounds were like 75, $80 a night. So it varies. You can do it for as much or as cheap as you want. We had bought a membership to the Thousand Trails. So you can, for us, it was, you could buy regional. So you could buy a membership where you stay at the campgrounds in the Northwest or just the Southwest or just the Southeast or the East Coast. So you could buy regional memberships or you could buy a membership to stay at all the campgrounds, which is what we did. And we ended up paid for itself within 6 months because we stayed at those campgrounds specifically because we could stay there for up to 3 weeks. We could go campground to campground. We didn't have to pay a fee when we were there because we had bought the membership. So um,
And how much is the membership?
that one that we bought was like 8 grand, but you can get them you could get them used. They had different variant. Like if you bought a regional one, it was like $575 and you're just like buying a Northwest. You're just staying at the campgrounds in the Northwest. And with those, it was like stay for 2 weeks and you have to be out a week and then you can go back for 2 weeks. With the membership we bought, which was about 8,000, 8,000, we could stay for up to 3 weeks and go park to park. So it paid for itself. Yeah. Within like 6 or 8 months, I think.
Wow.
Um, so that was, and then we sold it for like 4,000.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
yeah, so then we were able to resell that membership when we stopped traveling.
Oh,
A
okay.
lot of people buy used memberships too. There's Facebook groups for used memberships, but we had a membership to KOA, which is another popular. A lot of people stay at KOA. We had Harvest Host, which is where you stay for free at like wineries and farms. And so we stayed at a lot of really cool places like that, breweries. What else? We had Good Sam has a membership as well. So we would find Good Sam parks to stay at and you get a discount on your camping. And so it really, really depends. Like it really, really depends on how often you want to, where the areas you want to go, how long you want to stay at a campground. We were traveling every week at first, which we found out was too fast for our kids. They like to stay put longer. So we would usually stay most places. We stayed 2 weeks at least. So it really, really depends. We
Wow.
in Colorado. Colorado doesn't have any Thousand Trails campgrounds, and we stayed there for a month in April just because we were trying to make our way back to the Northwest when COVID was going on. And we stayed there for a month, and it was $1,200 to stay at that campground. So it was a lot. Yeah, it was a lot to stay at that campground. But it was right in downtown Colorado Springs, like right by Manitou Springs, right by the base of Pikes Peak, right in the heart of everything, and we met some of our greatest friends there that we love and adore now.
Yeah.
So but it really depends. Some campgrounds we stayed at were like $400 a month. There's a really nice campground outside of Boise that we adore, and we've stayed there 4 or 5 times. And if you do a monthly rate there, it's only $400 for a month at that campground, and it's really nice. So it varies.
Sure. Yeah. I just like my mind's kind of blown because there's like this whole world out there of like full-time like traveling families and different.
I think there's over 1 million people that travel in trailers full time.
Yeah. It's so crazy. So one thing I've always kind of been curious about too, especially like just because of the way I kind of live, is like getting good quality food and stuff. So I'm sure you guys just, would unhitch when you got somewhere and go load up at a grocery store or something. But how'd you guys get like food and all of that? Store it.
It depends on the area we're at. When you're in a place like Palm Springs, so we spent a decent amount of time in Palm Springs over the winter, beginning of the like late fall, early winter in 2019. And you're in the city at the campgrounds there. So it's super easy to hit lots of grocery stores there. When we were in Alabama, we were at an awesome campground on a lake, but it was 45 minutes to the nearest town that had a grocery store, and it had some grocery store I didn't know the name of and a Walmart. So it really, really depends. Most places you can get packages at, which is nice. So we would order a lot of stuff and have it delivered to the campground, especially Amazon with 2-day shipping. That makes it easy to kind of time your packages. So it really was hit or miss. There was definitely times where we were places where all we could hit was like a Walmart, which killed my soul inside, but like that's all they would have. When we were in Alabama for a month with COVID, that was all they had was a Walmart, really. I don't even know what this other store was. And it was tiny.
Yeah.
So the Walmart was the biggest thing they had. So that's where we would go and just do the best that we could. And we tried to find local as much as we could. So we would try to find farmers markets when it was like seasons, and find local butchers. We would look for local butchers in the area or butcher shops and stuff like that, and try to go to those and hit up for meat and stuff like that. And you don't have a lot of storage in a rig. We had a full-size refrigerator. It's shallower, so it's not as deep as like a fridge at home, but it was full size. A lot of people just have a single door fridge and freezer, and ours was double door fridge and freezer, and then a full pantry that is about as big as the pantry that we have in this house now too. So we had a good amount of storage, but you can really only last for about a week or so if you're, a week and a half. And so that was interesting, especially when COVID first hit, because people were hoarding, and it was people like us. We'd go to the store and we're like, we have no anything. We have none of this. We're out of like, it was easier to find RV toilet paper, right? So like people wouldn't know to go buy RV toilet paper.
Wait a minute, there's special RV toilet paper?
Yeah, it absorbs faster in your holding tank. So you put special treatment in your tank, and then the treatment breaks down this toilet paper faster.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, some
Didn't know
people
it
just
existed.
use normal toilet paper, but but I heard it can clog your tubes and stuff like that. So we were very obsessive about buying the RV toilet paper. But like paper towels, and like, we can't hoard in a trailer. You can't hoard things in a trailer. So that was really frustrating at first.
Mhm.
But for the most part, we would just do our best. And the other thing that was interesting, when you first start traveling, you want to go places and you want to try a new restaurant. Like, we love to eat out. And so it'd be like, we're in a town. Oh, this restaurant's supposed to be really good, or let's try this restaurant. And so that can get really expensive.
Mhm.
So limiting, like, that's a really good tip, is like limiting, like, okay, we're going to go somewhere. We're going to try one new restaurant, or we're going to try
Yeah.
one breakfast place and one dinner or lunch place. And that's it. So
Right.
trying to limit how much you eat out, because it can be expensive, especially when you have kids, and
Mhm.
or you wanted, somebody wants a drink or something like that. Like, it can get really, really expensive. And so we would start to kind of limit how often we ate out, and we mostly cooked and grilled and stuff like that.
And how was that, like cooking and grilling in that space?
Easy. We bought a Traeger tailgater, so it's like a mini Traeger with the legs fold up, and we could just stick it in our under our rig storage. And that's what we did most of the time, is we cooked on the Traeger. Kellen would smoke meat or cook something out there, and that's really mostly what we did for
Mhm.
dinner and stuff like that, is use our Traeger to cook outside. A lot of people have like different grills, like a Blackstone grill is really popular because it's like a griddle, and so you can cook all kinds of stuff outside
Nice. Yeah.
and whatnot. But yeah, we never had any issues. We had six burners on our stove, 5 burners on our stove, and so we never had any issues with cooking. We had a good amount of storage and whatnot. So
Oh, what's up, buddy?
I have a little kiddo in here, if you're listening. Can you go upstairs, please? Okay, upstairs. Okay. Oh goodness. Anyways, so yeah, we never had any issues with cooking or anything like that.
Here, let's ask Emmett while he's here. Hey, Emmett,
Yes.
how'd you like being on the road for a while? Did you like living on the road?
Did you like traveling?
Yes.
Did you? What'd you like about it?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
What
Yes,
was your
yes,
favorite
yes.
place we went?
The park that we just went last night.
The park we went to last night was
Awesome.
your favorite place.
Mhm.
Was Disney World your favorite place?
Yes.
Florida?
Yes.
For about a month, as we were making our way over to Florida, he kept asking, he'd wake up in the morning and say, "Are we in Florida yet? Are we to Florida? Is this Florida?" Like, no, not yet, buddy.
Mm.
Can you go upstairs,
I
please?
love the way I love Georgia.
Oh, you love Georgia too.
Oh, you like Georgia, huh?
And Uncle Travis.
Oh, we'll let Tiffany take
Hold on, I'll be right back.
the kiddo away. She'll be back here in a second. Ah, the joys of trying to do a podcast with kiddos.
Oh goodness.
It's that mom life.
It is. My husband is not on top of keeping them contained.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to scold Kellen on that one.
I know, right? Usually he's pretty good about this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Um,
oh yeah, food. But yeah, we had a decent size. A lot of people have a lot smaller fridges and freezers and pantries and stuff like that. So they have to shop, depending on how big their families are, at least once a week. So
yeah. So any other like tips, hacks, anything like that you think would be valuable for people to be aware of if they were ever to try and do this?
Yeah, so a couple tips. Oh, a couple of challenges and like things to expect are like when you're driving full time. So one of the places we had our rig worked on, the guy told me, he's like, these rigs are going basically, when you're driving down the road, you're hitting bumps and potholes and stuff. They're basically going through like a 7.0 earthquake every time you're driving them. So things are moving and shaking, right? And so things are going to break. That's just part of it. No matter how good you build it, if you're putting stress on something all the time, and if you're traveling often like we did, we put on over 15,000 miles in a year, things are going to break. So just expect things to break, expect things to go wrong, and just kind of go with it and be okay with it. We were super fortunate. We had a lot of friends who got tire blowouts. And we were really, really fortunate that we didn't have that happen. We ended up with a bent axle. And we did put new tires on our rig and on our truck. So just be prepared for that. One thing we did was we got a service plan. So I highly recommend people get that. Anytime anything would happen, like one of our air conditioning, we had 2 air conditionings in our rig, and one of them broke when we were in Palm Springs, and it was 90 some degrees outside, and we only had 1 AC.
Yeek.
And and so it was, and our microwave had broken at that point, right? And so we actually didn't, and we didn't even use the microwave very much. We didn't have a microwave for like 8 months. It was awesome. I know you don't have a microwave.
Mm-mm.
And so we were just like used to not having a microwave. And I think we had like things fixed, and it mounted to probably like $3,000-$4,000, and we paid $500. So having a service plan, especially if you're putting a lot of miles on your rig,
Mhm.
was a really clutch for us. We've used that now 3 times. So
Yeah.
we used it in Palm Springs, we used it in Colorado Springs, and now we're using it up here to get some more things fixed.
This reminds me of another thing I wanted to ask too, though, just to real quick.
Yeah.
Like, did you ever drive the trailer? Like,
Not
did you
very
tow?
far.
Like, I'm wondering what it'll feel like. Like, I'm a decent driver, but it's intimidating to like think about towing a trailer. I don't know.
Driving a motorhome versus a fifth wheel versus a travel trailer is going to be a lot different. Travel
Mhm.
trailers are a lot squirrelier, especially if they're small. The fifth wheel just guides so easily because it's in the bed of your truck. And so, yeah, you have to turn like a semi, right? You can't cut corners sharp. So you got to make sure that you're paying attention when you're turning. So you really do have to pay a lot of attention when you're driving. Or if you have a motorhome and you're towing a small car, it's not as bad, but it really, even in high winds, we hit some pretty high winds, and we had a single rear wheel truck. A lot of people have dualies. And there was a few times where Kellen's like, man, I wish we had a dually right now. But it was when we were having like 40, 50, 60 mile an hour gusts while we were driving.
Yeah.
Most of the time we felt super stable and secure and whatnot with the setup that we had. And when it's big, it just kind of guides really easily. The smaller the trailer, the more wind and sway you're going to get. But with the big rigs, they're so heavy that they just kind of stay right behind you.
Well, that's interesting because I felt like it would be scarier to drive something bigger.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it would actually be worse to have something smaller.
I think with the wind and whatnot, my in-laws have a small rig, 24-foot trailer, and they hate going anywhere with wind. If it's windy, they're like, oh, we're not going to leave today. We're going to leave tomorrow because it's really windy, and they get a little nervous, but they also they just weekend it, So when you're used to it, it's not too bad.
Do you think there's like a happy medium in there? Like, just picture me driving and towing a trailer. Like,
I still feel like you should get like a Class C and tow a little car behind it or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like a motorhome, and then tow a car behind it, a little car.
Interesting. Okay. I'll have to look.
Or like a 26-foot trailer, 26 or 28 foot. You could probably do okay. I wouldn't go smaller.
Okay. Okay. Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. So now keep going with any other tips or.
So yeah, having things break often. So be prepared. Be prepared for pests. Like I said, a lot of people get mice or get ants or like all that kind of stuff. Like it happens. Like don't let it be like, I can't do this anymore. Like don't let it deter you from like continuing on.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes kids in small spaces can be hard. So having nice weather is really awesome because the kids could just go out and play. And remember that the walls are thin. So like with our daughter having PANS, she has a lot of rage and outbursts and stuff like that. So that was really hard for us at times. She would like have a meltdown and it's just like, everybody can hear you, and so that was a little bit tough. What else? Tips. One of my tips is to have an RV GPS. So for us, that was super important because our rig was 13.6. So 13 feet, 6 inches. And so it's like an RV or a semi truck GPS. You put in the size of your trailer and it'll take you on roads that you can fit on. So a lot of times there will be bridges that we couldn't go under. So it would divert us from going on those roads or weight limits on a road, that sort of thing. So it'll take
That's a great tip.
Yeah, it'll take you on the routes that your rig can fit on. So you put in like the weight, you put in like the height, the size, the dimensions, all that stuff. And then the GPS will calculate routes based on the size of what you're pulling. So that was important. There was one time, I can't remember where we were, in Alabama, and we were driving in Huntsville, I think it was. and we're coming up to this bridge, and I'm like, oh my God, stop. I was like, it's an 8-foot bridge. And then I'm like, oh wait, we don't have the trailer. Okay, we're good. I was like, stop, we can't make it. And then I forgot we weren't pulling the trailer with us at the time. But there's things like that. There was one bridge we went under, we're 13.6, it was 13.8.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God, what if the bridge settled? What if that's not right? And so we're going, and we're just like, you get like tightened a little ball, and you're like, oh God, are we going to lose our AC? And so we made it. We never had any issues like that. We did have to turn around one time because we were going to our condo in Chelan, and we just always go the same way. And we get probably 10 minutes outside of the town, and there's a tunnel, and the tunnel is 13.2. And I'm like, stop. I totally forgot about it. I didn't even think about it. I was like, stop. So we had to pull over and try and like turn around on the side of the road and go
oh my God.
an hour-and-a-half detour around the other way to get into Chelan. So that was a little bit.
Oh my
One time
God.
we didn't put it in the GPS because we knew where we were
Right.
going. So yeah, having an RV or a semi-truck GPS was clutch for us. Plan your drive days to take longer than you expect. So you'll put it in your GPS, will be like, oh, it's 4 hours. Plan for at least an extra hour. When depending on weather. There was one time we were in head-on winds, and we were getting 4 miles to the gallon. So we had to stop for gas like 4 or 5 times on like a 6-hour drive. It was insane because the wind was so strong, and it was just a headwind the entire way.
Wow.
So just plan for your drive days to take longer than you expect. Be chill when things go wrong. That's another thing I thought about, is like things will go wrong. Like we have some friends, some people we know that their first day out, they went to the gas station and cut the corner with their rig and clipped the gas station like with their rig, and their first day completely like damaged their rig. They did it a second time like a week later.
Oh my God.
Like these people they're like, is it always like this? And we're like, no, it's not always like like they just had really bad luck with their first like day or two out. But just things will happen, things will go wrong. Like don't let it deter you, and don't base everything. People will try it for a few months and be like, I don't think this is for me. Is like, everybody tells me, give it 6 months, give it 6 months. And if after 6 months you are still miserable, then maybe it isn't for you. But I would say like around that 6-month mark was when we were like, yeah, we really like this, like it was hard at first with the kids, especially. But at the 6-month mark, we were like, yep, we like this. This is really cool. So I always say, give it 6 months. Don't overstuff your rig. So rigs have weight limits, and we had some friends who started out and they were 300 pounds overweight. And I'm like, 300 pounds is a lot to be overweight because you're putting too much weight on your axles and it's affecting your truck and all that kind of stuff. And so you don't need everything in your closet. Like I think I ended up with 2 pairs of jeans, 5 t-shirts, couple sweatshirts, 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. You really don't need a lot. You'll do a lot of laundry, but you don't need to bring your entire wardrobe with you. You don't have the space, and you don't have the weight either. So
this is where I think I'm made for this, because I literally wear the same outfit for like an entire week.
I wore is workout clothes like all the time.
Right.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I reuse the same cup for water for like a whole week. I wear the same clothes. I'm like, I think I could totally do this and it'd be like not a big deal.
And storage bins were clutch for us too. So we have a good sized storage underneath our rig. We were really fortunate with it being a full-time rig. So we would buy like those big black storage bins with the yellow lids at Costco and have them divided up. So I had like swim and outdoor toys was one bin for the kids. And then like all of our black tank hoses. So you don't want to mix your fresh and your black tank hoses. So like our dump hoses and our black tank water hoses all go in a bin, and then our freshwater hoses in a bin, and like whatever else we had, in a bin. And so it keeps things organized, even inside the trailer. I had 2 storage ottomans for books and homeschool. And then I had bins for art, all that kind of stuff. So having bins to store things and like put things away is really nice, because it cleans up fast because it's a small space, but it gets cluttered really, really easily. So
yeah.
Having bins to store things is really, really clutch for us.
Yeah. Any other tips you got? Is that the list?
Man, I don't know. I could have so many depending on the topic, but those are like my big things. I will say we were never overweight, but we definitely had way too much stuff. We spent the first 9 months, every week we would have a load to take to donation, whether it was clothes or just stuff. I'm like, we don't need all this stuff. So we kept downsizing every month, we were always having some kind of donation bag going to get rid of stuff, because you just learn to live with so little.
Yeah.
That
That's
you don't
awesome.
need.
Yeah. All right. So closing question. Would you do it again?
I wish I was doing it right now.
Yeah.
100%. I was super bummed when the kids were like, we don't want to travel anymore. I was really sad because we didn't get to spend nearly as much time in Florida last year because of COVID. We kind of had to hunker down at the campground we were at for a month and see what was happening, because nobody knew back then. And so we didn't get to explore Florida nearly as much as I would have hoped to. We didn't get to see any of the East Coast, which I really wanted to do. So yeah, I really wish we were still traveling right now. My husband says we can do it again. If we're here for a while and we don't like it, we can always do it again. Or when we're older, we plan to eventually, if we don't do it again, when the kids are out of the house, we plan to travel again, because I would keep doing it in a heartbeat. There's just so many cool places to see. I miss our travel friends. I just miss being able to pick up and go when you don't like where you're at. That's the nice thing. You go somewhere and you're like, we don't like it here. You just pick up and go. You just move your house. Like that's the nice thing, is you just move to where you want to go if you don't like somewhere you're at, which is really awesome. And if you like somewhere you're at, you can stay as long as you want.
Yeah.
So, yes, I would 100% be traveling again as soon as I can.
Yeah. So you brought up another thing that actually, I totally lied. I have another question I want to ask. Yeah. With COVID, I know a lot of people like all of a sudden went out and bought trailers because they're all bored at home. So they like started getting recreational vehicles and like camping and stuff. So has that made an impact? Like, did you notice a difference in how full campgrounds were and things like that?
I definitely noticed. It was interesting. We met a lot of people who started traveling last year with COVID, and they'd be like, how long have you guys been on the road? And we're like, like over a year. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're like old pros. So we would get so many questions from people who just started traveling because of COVID, and it's really cool that they did that. It's really great for people like us who want to sell our rig, because it totally increased the resale value of trailers and motorhomes. You couldn't find a trailer on a lot anywhere. We were last summer, we were still going to travel, and we were thinking about switching rigs actually. And so we were out searching for different rigs, and it's like, they're like, we can't keep them on the lot right now.
Wow.
We had some specific things, which is totally the opposite of the way the RV industry typically is. So this was great. Last year was great for the RV industry and the recreation, any type of boating industry, any type of recreational industry was great last year. There was definitely some times where campgrounds were a little more full. But it wasn't too bad. It was great to meet people, enjoying. I think people just went into it not knowing what to expect. And I think a lot of people had like these grand expectations about it's going to be this really cool, like lifestyle. And it can be, but it's just you're just living your life. It's still life. Yeah. You still have to do the things you do. You're not just laying by the beach all day long, sunbathing, drinking a pina colada. You know what I mean? Like you still have to live your life and pay your bills and work and homeschool your kids and grocery shop and do laundry and all those things. So, but yeah, so it was great to meet some people that, headed out last year because of COVID. And I already know some people who were like, okay, we tried it for, whatever, and we're done. It wasn't for us. So.
Yeah.
Definitely takes people who are cool with change and living minimalistically, stuff like that. It takes those kind of people.
So me, like I'm ready to I love traveling is like such an adventure for me. I love it. I mean, there's a lot of preparation and work that goes into it, but like outside of that part, like I just love. And that's another thing too. Was it hard to find places? Because I know, like, were they full? I guess is like, was it hard to nail down places or?
California, the South in the winter is hard to get into. Everybody wants to be in Southern California or Florida. So we played what you call like the Florida shuffle. So it's like, there's like in the winter is in Florida is high season. So you can typically only stay at a campground for 2 weeks. So you play the Florida shuffle. So you go to like coordinate different campgrounds you're going to be to, and you're just shuffling your way around Florida. So it can be, especially the Keys, it can be really hard to find time in Florida in the winter.
So a lot of
same
planning
with
had to go into it.
Oh yeah, we would plan. Excuse me. We at first started planning like 6 months in advance for Florida. If you want to be in Florida in the winter, you got to plan as early as you can. As early as you can get a spot, you plan it out.
Wow. Yeah.
And book it out. And if you have to change it later, you have to change it, but you just book whatever you can. But we tried to book, I don't know, a couple months in advance. Toward the end there, we're like, oh, where do we want to go now? And we would see what was open, and then we would go. And at first in like March, April, May, not a lot of people were moving around. People were kind of stationary with their rigs, seeing what was happening. And we were stationary for a while in the first part. And then we spent a month in Alabama in April. And then after that, we're like, okay, we're going to keep going, and it really wasn't bad at all. So we
I thought of another thing too. You had this whole like other sort of aspect within this. I remember with laundry. There's a whole nother story within this experience. Like,
well, we ended up buying a washer for our rig. So
right.
It was already plumbed for washer and dryer. In our master bedroom, we had a pretty big closet, and then we had like a smaller closet we had originally hung clothes in, but it was plumbed for a washer and dryer. So we were super fortunate. We just bought a washer, like a full size washer, and then a clothesline, and would just hang our clothes to dry outside. But laundry can be expensive. I was spending like $50 a month on laundry, going to laundromats. And so that can add up really quick, and it's spending a lot of your time, right? If they don't have a good laundromat, some of the laundromats and campgrounds can be a little like they're not very well kept, like their machines aren't super well kept. And so I would try to go out and find a laundromat, but then you're spending a few hours of your day at the laundromat, right? So it's definitely, laundry can be expensive when you're traveling. So we found a scratch and dent on Craigslist for like $200, really nice, like fancy washing machine. This guy bought scratch and dent stuff for nothing and then sold them for cheap in Florida. And so it's one that you buy at like Best Buy. So like super nice one. And so yeah, we put that in our rig, and that was awesome. You can only do it when you're hooked up to sewer, obviously. Like if you don't have a sewer hookup, you can't do it in there, but it was so helpful. I felt like I could stay ahead of laundry, and then just line drying your clothes. We just hooked a clothesline up to the back of our rig and would hang them out there to dry, which is nice. So
yeah. All right. I think I've asked all my questions now.
Awesome.
Like I'm like, you need to do it again so that I can do it with you.
I know. I really want to go again. I loved it. There's so many places that we didn't get to see that I would love to go back. And, it was a mixed review from people. It was at first, my mom was like sad, because it was just me, and my dad passed away, my brother passed away. So it was just me and my family. And so she was sad. And some people were like, that is so cool you're doing it. I never would have thought to do it. A lot of people were like, you are crazy. There is no way I could ever do that. And that's totally fine. It is not for everybody. It really isn't. But you get to see so much. A big thing for me was this introduced us to homeschool. And even though we still have challenges with it, it would be a very unlikely situation that I ever put my kids in public school again. We've just learned so much, and I just love the freedom. And that's a huge thing, is the freedom. Even now, Kellen still works from home, and we can still just go whenever we want, and he can work from wherever we want, and we can school from wherever we want, so we're not tied to a school district schedule. And so it's just really nice to have some of the freedoms and that goes with traveling, and you just see so much, you learn so much, you meet some really cool people. So if anybody's ever like, oh, I've thought about doing this, it seems kind of cool. Like if you think you have it in you to live a small minimalistic lifestyle, like I say, give it a shot. You can always stop and buy a house, but you don't want to look back and be like, oh man, I wish we'd done that. That was my thing. I didn't want to regret like not doing it, because I was like, this is something that's on my heart, something that I think our family could really benefit from. And we, with Kellen having been out of the state for so long, I wanted us to spend a lot of time together. We just didn't have a lot of family time. And so that was important to me as well. So
Well, that's what I was so excited about for you guys doing this, was how cool, even if it was like not the most glamorous thing, like at the end of the day, years down the road, your kids are going to have memories of this. You guys are going to have memories. It's like such a cool thing to have in your history to look back on. And instead, like years down the road going, remember when we thought about doing that and we didn't? Like, I think it's so cool that you guys just took the leap into it,
Yeah.
Just thought it was so cool.
It was awesome. Good experience.
Yeah. All right. I think
Awesome.
I've asked everything.
All right, cool. Oh, that was fun. That was fun.
It was fun. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us on social media. You can find me at Tiffany at Instagram at Tiffany.Hubner. And what about you?
I'm on Instagram as Real Food Revolutionary.
All right. And if you enjoyed this podcast, we would love if you would like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. We want to get the word out about our podcast so we can impact more people and hopefully entertain y'all along the way.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, everybody.
See you guys.
Bye.